So this is where it all started back in 2004 right here in Yarmouth, Nova Scotia. So we got a super exciting video today for you because it's all about money. That's right, baby, all about money. How I became a millionaire by the age of 23. Gonna walk you through it. We're gonna go see some of the buildings I started at. I'm obviously not gonna have time to show you all of them, but we will review a lot of the main ones, and so you can get a good idea of how you can do this yourself very easily. I became a millionaire at age 23. It's not very hard to do, and here's how. All right, so this was the very first building, and just got done talking with Art and Shirley, and they were the building managers for me. Take you on a quick tour. You can see it behind me. It kind of looks like the exact same way it looked when I actually bought the building, oddly enough, and I had fixed it up, and then of course sold it later on and refinanced it. So here's the whole thing. You kind of got the bottom L. This is an old motel from back in the day. And then you got the upper piece here, and the main house used to be the innkeeper's house, and then the office in the front. So let's take a walk through the property. I'll tell you exactly how I did it. I was 19 at the time when I bought this building, and I knew the man that had owned it, and he had it as like a motel slash long-term stay kind of an idea behind it. And went up to him and I approached him, and I really wanted to get into real estate and make some money and get moving on things in life. So I chatted with the guy, and we came up with an idea. I had told him I'm probably not going to get approved for a commercial loan through the bank, and I asked him if he would be willing to hold seller financing, and sure enough, he was very familiar with seller financing and allowed me to buy the building behind me, holding majority of the mortgage. And I used my army money, as well as my mom had a line of credit, and she had lent me the use of her line of credit to be able to come up with the down payment money and some of the money to start rehabilitating the building. And hopefully I got some good photos that I'll add to the video so you can see what it looked like when I actually owned it. Much nicer. It is very easy to take care of your buildings and not have them look like this. But that's kind of how the deal went together. Ended up buying that building with, I think, around maybe $25,000 down, and then he held the rest of the mortgage. And then for 4 years I worked on it, slowly redoing each unit and building it up and getting some good decent tenants into the building and getting it on track. And now let's go check out the next building I bought. So this is the second building I bought. Now 4 years had gone by owning that first building that you've seen. I paid down that mortgage quite a bit during that 4-year period because I only had a 10-year amortization on that mortgage. So it went really well for me to pay it down with that seller financing. And then I went out and refinanced that building, releasing some of the equity, and of course I put in sweat equity by cleaning up the building. So I released that money and then had enough money to buy this building behind me, which is downtown in my hometown. And it's a 3-unit kind of duplex, with one of them being a up and down and the other one being a full duplex on the side. And I bought it for $75,000. The place was, let's just say, the nastiest building I've ever been in at the time. And this tenant that was down in here had at least 12 cats, and they sprayed everywhere, cat hair everywhere, and I am totally allergic to cats. It's not a good time. Threw up so many times in that apartment, having to clean it and redo it. It wasn't even funny. So I fixed up this building. The project took about 2 to 3 months in total, and then I had found a buyer shortly after that, and I flipped the building for a profit of, let's wait for this car to go by. Flipped the building for a profit of around $40,000. So with that money, what did I do? I did not go out and buy a Range Rover like the one you see behind me. So let me show you what I did with it. All right, so the winds picked up a lot. this is the next property after I sold the one on Kirk Street. I bought this one and one other house at the exact same time off of the bank. Both were repossessed properties. I paid, I think, $45,000 for this house, and I think $47,000 for the next house that I'm going to show you next. And as you can see with this house, pretty simple house. Took me 4 weeks to fix it, and as I was finishing up with the house, I actually posted it for sale myself on Kijiji, which is kind of like the Craigslist of Canada, and got a buyer, helped them out with the finance on it, you know, got them approved and all that, and sold it to them. And they were moving in the front door as we were moving out the back door, and I took a good profit of around $45,000 on this house alone and rolled it into another one. So what I'm going to talk to you now about is about life cycles of buildings, and all buildings go through this life cycle, and it's amazing to see in progress. And you'll notice it, you know, this house is kind of deteriorated a little bit now. They've actually managed to keep it. It's the same person that owns it now, still. But the life cycle is when a developer develops the building, it's brand new, it's beautiful. So 15 to 20 years go by, that developer sells the building. They paid for the whole thing, they made their money, they're ready to release their money and keep building new buildings and bigger ones. So they sell it typically to a doctor or a lawyer, some professional who's just looking for cash flow and some tax depreciation value to it too. So that's typically who buys that kind of first on the market kind of building. And then that professional, let's say investor, isn't really interested in the real estate side of it. They're interested in the cash flow, and they do the very minimum to the property as they can, right? Anything just to make that bottom line, that monthly payment go, that's all they're looking for. So then, you know, another generation goes by, a decade if you want to say, and they sell it again. But now the building's kind of more like a B class, where it would have been more of an A class before, and they sell it to, let's say, another person that's either new to the market or another doctor or whatever professional, and they just do nothing, let the building run down. And then comes the investor people like me who see potential in fixing it up again. So I would say real estate developers that aren't rich, you know, that are willing to put in the groundwork behind these buildings. We buy it, go in there, fix the thing back up, let's say to a B plus, you know, as close to back to brand new as possible, re-rent it, get the cash flow back up and running, get the buildings looking good, and then we sell it again to somebody who's going to be in that more of a professional investor market, opposed to, you know, an actual flipper or, you know, real estate developer. So that's how they all go, and the cycle just keeps going round and round and round. And that's why you'll see, especially that first building I showed you, it looks horrible right now. Now is the time that someone who's a flipper is going to walk in there and buy it, you know, for a few $100,000 and fix it back up and then sell it again. And, you know, it just keeps repeating itself over and over again. So I often laugh that there's going to come a day when this house is back on the market and I buy it again for, you know, $50,000 or whatever it ended up being. So it is kind of funny seeing how that life cycle works. So this is the fourth property that I had bought, and I continued flipping houses and either refinancing them and renting them out, or selling them, you know, flipping them for the profit. And eventually I did, let me think here, another one down this street, then that one, and then that one. So 3 more of these kind of houses. To make the video short, we're not going to go to each one of those houses to show you, but basically I was saving up that down payment money to buy a bigger building outside of this town. Now, as far as it goes from Yarmouth, I mean, there's only 7,000 people in this town. There's only so many houses I can flip without being a relatively big guy in a small town, which is not my goal. So, I mean, I thought it would be sustainable to make maybe $100,000 to $200,000 a year in the town, flipping properties, but you quickly run out of projects to even do. So I knew I had to, you know, hit up a much bigger city. So that's where we're on to next. Let me show you the most amazing deal. which I took all my money, about $200,000 that I had gotten from flipping these properties, and I hit the city and made a huge deal, and that's how I made my first million. So let's see it. Alright, so just before we hit up the city, it's a long drive from this little town. It's about 3 hours of a drive. So just wanted to clarify a few points and kind of give you a little bit better of a timeline as to why I made some of the decisions and talk about those life decisions with you, because we all need to make them along the way. So what had happened was I had bought that first apartment building, the kind of a rundown building that you had seen, when I was 19. I was still in university at the time, and that's why for 4 years I didn't do another project, or 3.5 if you want to call it that. So for that time I was just renting it out. Thank God I had Art and Shirley, and I showed you a picture of them as superintendents, and then my mother as well to help me out. And then I drove back and forth and even bought a minivan and kind of ran a shuttle from my university down the shore of Nova Scotia and dropping off university students to go home for the weekends, and made enough money for the gas money, right? Everything needs to pay for itself. And that's another thing in life you should learn when you're starting out. You can't be spending your money on fancy cars or expensive houses. You got to keep those costs low, because in real estate, even with a good cap rate, the cash flow isn't there until years down the road, to be able to spend that money. You really got to keep it in the buildings. So this is the life stage I was at. I was right out of university. I had gotten my degree. I was gonna go work in the bank and kind of do what I do now, which is investments and make rich people more money, which is what I love doing in trading. But I flipped that property that you've seen, the 3-unit building, and I made that money. And I said, hey, if I go work for the RBC, at the time, they would have only have paid me probably 35 to 40,000 starting pay. And I had already made more money in 6 weeks of flipping that property than I could have made all year. So it was a kind of an easy decision to keep going with, hey, let's keep going with this business. I can make a heck of a lot more money doing it. And, to say whether it worked better or worse, I don't know. But I definitely have a lot more freedom in my life and enjoy that freedom over if I had worked for a 9-to-5 kind of a job for my life. So who knows? You can comment below which one you think I should have done. I think I would have been successful doing either or, but this is the life I've chose. I love it. I'm having fun. Let's hit up the city and see how I turn that $200,000 into becoming a millionaire by age 23. Here it is. So behind me are the buildings that tipped the scale and made me my first $1 million. So all these buildings look a little bit run down now, but trust me, I had them very good looking and full of nice flowers and all redone inside. So they were pretty nice back in the day. So I took over this building when I was 23 years old, accumulation of all those house flipping to use the down payment. And I actually found this building in the classified section of the newspaper. And the owner put down $2.5 million, and he would self-finance it with a $250,000 down payment. So I called him up, started negotiating with him, and it took me 6 months of negotiation to get him down to a $200,000 down payment, and he held the rest of the mortgage for me. So then the years piled up. I cleaned up the building. He was a very old man and was not looking after the buildings. In fact, he didn't even know that he had 3 units empty in the building. He thought it was completely full. So kind of odd on that, but took over the building, took that leap of faith. We're in the downtown core of Halifax, just off of Spring Garden Road, which is the main busy road, I guess, for Halifax. And the deal went okay. I rented out the units right away and got them cleaned up and got better tenants in there and raised the rents way up on them, and ended up making a profit. So I think by year 2, we'll start back at year 1. I think I was negative $1,000 a month on these buildings. By year 2, I was positive $8,000 a month off of all these units. So it did work out for me. And then of course year 3 I ended up selling these buildings to another developer, but I already knew that I couldn't sell or do what I wanted with the building, and that was tear it down and build a high-rise. So once I found out I couldn't do that and was trying to negotiate with the neighbor who refused to sell me her property, then it was fine to sell them off, because you always want the maximum profit, and once that maximum return is reached, there's no real need to hold them any longer, right? You're going to have a deterioration of it. And here's how it looks today in the back. So you can see kind of how it goes. There's life cycles to every building, even these, right? And this is the building that wouldn't be sold to me. So since I couldn't get that, and they have a right of way up this driveway to get into their backyard, I took the deal and sold them and made a really good penny on it. I was really happy with the sale, and happy not to have them anymore, I guess, for the price that I got. So that's the video, and that's how you can make your first million by age 23. Very easy to do, especially if you live in North America or any developing society, I guess you can say, you know, first world society. But interesting buildings. It's good to see it again. I haven't actually been back here in a while. Had a lot of good memories in these buildings, and even lived in one of these back units right there for a good year. So very good experience, but definitely everybody can do this. There's no magic to it. It's a start small, right? Get a system going and then just keep going with it. And then eventually you can buy $1 million apartment building and keep moving up, right? So that's the video. Hit subscribe, definitely hit that like button, and leave a comment below and tell me about your first buildings that you bought. So good luck with your investments.